Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:06. It's Monday morning, and we're ready to go. You need us here. We need you there. And so I think we're all set and ready for an April 15th special. That's right. It's tax day. Get your extension in now if you can. That's how you got to roll these days. Coming up at 6:05, Caroline Glick from Jerusalem on Iran's attack on that city. 6:35, Robin Ficker running for U.S. Senate in Maryland. 7:05, Joe DeGenevo will join us. 7:35, Ryan Ellis, he's a tax expert. And then at 8:05, Tom Fitton with Judicial Watch on the beginning of Trump's criminal trial in New York. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning. Good morning.
You sound fantastic.
I'm a little cold.
There is a bug going around, Julie, in
Yes.
combination with the whole allergy season thing.
Yes.
So
I'm a mess.
I guess the point is exactly. You've got it all going on, as they say. You know, who would have thought? I mean, I'm frankly shocked that the policy of don't didn't actually work with Iran. And every time Joe Biden is asked about, what his message is to Iran after the October 7th terror attacks, because, of course, Iran financed the terror attacks through Hamas, also financed attacks on American soldiers, including those killed in Iraq with the Houthis killing them, financed by Iran. Also, by the way, Iran, if they're financing anything, partly is doing it because number one, Biden administration's oil policies has driven up the cost of oil, so they're much richer now than they were when Donald Trump was president. And number two, we actually released a lot of money that was being held from Iran under sanctions. The Biden administration came in and reversed Trump's policy and went ahead and opened up all that money. Oh, and also lifted any pressure on European countries to do business with Iran. So all that financing of terror attacks is basically because the Biden administration has decided to allow Iran to get rich so they can use their money to kill innocent Americans and Israelis. And now we have an unprecedented missile and drone attack on the nation of Israel, on the city of Jerusalem. And up until this moment, Joe Biden, whenever asked about this,
Mr. President, to Iran in this moment.
Don't.
Are American personnel and assets at risk, Mr. President?
don't. You heard him right there,
yeah.
Julie. He said don't.
Right. This just proves to me what an awful father he is, because anybody who raises children understands that when your children are about to do something bad and you just go, don't, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. You have to show them that there are consequences, that something will happen if you do. And what we've seen there, just as you laid out very smartly, they made it very clear that there won't be any consequences, that there won't be anything that you pay for actually doing it. So I just couldn't help but think over the weekend, no wonder Hunter Biden is such a mess. He was never given any sort of guidelines and parameters and guidance.
Yeah, and it's one thing to be a lousy parent. It's a much worse thing to be a lousy leader of the free world.
And I wonder, what is your message to Hezbollah and its backer, Iran? Don't.
Oh, well, that time he said it 4 times, so you know he means business. So what does all this mean? It means that there were 170 drones launched in a coordinated attack on Israel, including 120 ballistic missiles and 30 cruise missiles. Thankfully, though, most of the attack was thwarted by the incredible Iron Dome defense technology, which, can we pause for a moment and thank Ronald Reagan for developing that technology when he was ridiculed?
And Biden was against it.
Of course he
Biden was against it.
Of course Biden was against it. Biden criticized Reagan for saying, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Yeah, Biden didn't want to kill Osama bin Laden.
And now the only major message you're hearing from around the world from our Western allies, or at least I shouldn't say that. Let me pause for a moment. From many media personalities like Piers Morgan in London and We haven't heard an official statement from the British government. But what you're hearing mumbled about is that it's now incumbent on Israel to show restraint. It's incumbent on Israel to make sure that this doesn't escalate into a wider war. And all of these questions, is this going to escalate? It's escalated. It's already escalated. Iran has just escalated it. And you don't hear much condemnation of Iran.
People watched what happened in the skies over the Middle East overnight, and they are wondering this morning, has this now escalated into a wider war?
I don't think there's any reason that it needs to.
But has it? Are we now in the midst of a wider war?
The president doesn't believe that it needs to move in that direction whatsoever, Kristen.
John Kirby is such an embarrassment, and he knows better. And which makes it even worse, by the way.
Right.
So the message here is, obviously, it has escalated into a wider war. The only question is, how will Israel respond? Of course, they have to respond. And all of these calls for them to show restraint. It's like, well, listen, your defense system protected your people for the most part. You mitigated the damage. So let's just move on now. Everything's fine. Would we react that way? Would any other nation on earth be called on to react that way if they were attacked like this?
No. And obviously, the fact that America is likely, under Biden, willing to react that way. Let's move on. This doesn't have to get any bigger, right? Is a lack of leadership. The U.S. should fully, and this flies right in the face of Biden's commitment to total support for Israel. Israel should be allowed to respond to this.
Of course, and they will. So there's no question about
yes.
whether they'll be allowed to. Nobody's going to, they will respond and they will do what they need to do to protect the people of their country. And what's keeping me up at night right now is if this is exactly what Iran is wanting to bait them into.
Yeah.
Iran, thanks to Joe Biden and Barack Obama, has been trying to develop weapons of mass destruction. Yeah. And if Israel does retaliate and does attack Iran, does that, suddenly unleash even more of whatever their firepower happens to be? I don't know. Well, these are critical times when you want a steady hand and you want leadership and you want strength. We have weakness. We have weakness and indecision.
Well, this is an opportunity to destroy that nuclear plan that Iran has. That
unless it's already been developed. We don't know. We don't know to what extent Iran has nuclear capabilities right now. I think but yes, you're right.
We could do some damage to it. And I feel like we probably do know. And I think Israel probably does know. We can certainly disrupt it. This is an opportunity to do that. But instead, the Biden administration is more interested in criticizing Israel over this. Yeah. It's just, I can't believe I'm even saying that. It's just laughable.
Well, and Chuck Schumer, of course, put out a statement on the X platform saying, we stand with our ally Israel at this time of crisis. And last time we checked with Chuck Schumer,
Israel is a democracy. 5 months into this conflict, it is clear that Israelis need to take stock of the situation and ask, must we change course? At this critical juncture, I believe a new election is the only way to allow for a healthy and open decision-making process about the future of Israel.
Yeah, that was Chuck Schumer 1 month ago throwing Netanyahu under the bus and saying that Israel was the problem. And, of course, after the accidental drone attack on Jose Andres's volunteer chefs 2 weeks ago, suddenly we had the Jake Sullivan and Antony Blinken saying that Israel is in danger of becoming indistinguishable with Hamas. This administration has been signaling every step of the way that they are not supporting Israel, that they're throwing Israel under the bus, and this has given Iran the green light. In fact, what did Joe Biden know about this pending attack? And when did he know it? It appears through reports out of the Jerusalem Post and from our ally Turkey that, in fact, the Biden administration had forewarning and actually gave the green light for this. We'll dive into that in just a moment. First, though, it's 5:15.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
WMAL, making sense of the forecast. Because you never know what Mother Nature has in store. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
I know it's shocking, absolutely shocking, that Joe Biden saying don't didn't resonate in Tehran. Make no mistake, the only reason that Iran has money and is in any way a influential power in that region is because the Obama and Biden administrations have propped them up. During the Bush administration and during the Trump administration, they were undermined. They had major issues with their economy. The people of Iran were rising up and starting to push back on their totalitarian government. For some reason, the Obama administration and all of the powers that be around him decided that the only way to fix the Middle East is to allow Iran to be a major player there. And they spent 8 years propping Iran up. Biden came in and continued that policy, and here we are today. Now, according to the Jerusalem Post, Julie, Iran informed Turkey in advance of its planned operation against Israel. A Turkish diplomatic source told Reuters yesterday that the U.S. conveyed to Iran via Turkey that its operation must be, quote, within certain limits. In other words, the Biden administration knew about it, and they gave Iran the green light. They didn't give them any warning. They didn't say what any normal president would say is, if you strike Israel, you're striking us, and we will retaliate. We will see it as an act of war against us. So don't do it. The don't seems to have been removed from the equation here. Now it turns out it's like, hey, we understand if you're going to attack Israel, here are the parameters that we'll be okay with. That's what this report suggests.
That is incredibly disturbing. And what's so sad too, Larry, is that there have been incredible pro-democracy protests within Iran and they're brutally cracking down on them. We've seen the death of several of these protesters, the incarceration of many more, and the message this sends to those people bravely protesting within Iran, that to me is what's so tragic, because they are watching what's happening. They are looking from signals from the West for support. Many of the Iranian people want to live in peace with the Jewish people. This is with Israelis. They don't want this kind of conflict. And so, over the weekend, you also saw chants from these idiots on the left, wanting Iran to strike Israel. There's polls on Twitter, X, formerly Twitter, whose side are you on? As if there's a choice, right? But I think about those protesters, like the protesters in China, like the protesters in Hong Kong. Our administration's position is got to be very painful for those people.
The rationale behind this, other than Iran being evil and loving terror and hating Jews, is that on April 1st, Israel launched a strike against the Iran embassy building in Damascus. Not the full embassy, but the building that housed the Islamic National Guard Higher Command. This is a location where these Revolutionary Guard, the IRG, these guys are the leaders of the terrorist efforts out of Tehran.
Yeah.
And they have been coordinating out of Damascus, Syria, the launches from Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis. So, I mean, this was a military strike against military personnel.
Right.
And Iran says, oh, well, then we'll launch missiles at Jerusalem. By the way, at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is, right next, it's the Temple on the Mount. When the Muslims came in and conquered Jerusalem, they built a mosque right over where the previous Jewish temple was. This is what they do. They desecrate holy sites of other religions. Hold on. Yeah. The Jewish government, the Israeli government, through Iron Dome, protected one of the holiest sites in the Islamic religion from Iran's missiles. Think about that, because it was an indiscriminate launch against civilians and peaceful people going about their daily lives. Meanwhile, Israel's strike was a targeted laser-like against generals.
Right.
And now, and people in the world are saying, well, they did shoot their embassy.
I know. That's what I was going to say is I love this sort of narrative that it's like the embassy, where cocktail parties, are housed,
in Damascus,
right. Not where they plan the murder of civilians. Yeah. And also these people, these generals in Iran from the Islamic Republic, they are terrorizing Iranian citizens as well. It's the same thing as when you look at what the situation in Gaza and the starving people and the people that are in pain and suffering there. That's Hamas's fault.
Yeah.
That's not Israel's fault.
Of course. And meanwhile, there is no leadership in this nation. There's no leadership at our White House. Joe Biden, if he really did know about this in advance, according to this report, decided to spend the weekend in Rehoboth, of course, on the beach, getting tan. Late in the afternoon, Saturday, after the attack, it was announced that Joe Biden would address the nation. And then less than an hour later, White House said, nope, there will be no address to the nation. So
yeah, he got tired.
That's where our leadership is right now at this time of crisis. It is 5:23.
Making sense of your world.
Thank you very much for covering this topic.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news. Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Time is 5:36. It's O'Connor and Company here on this Monday morning. Tax Day, 15th day of April. Thank you so much for tuning in here. Coming up at 6:05, Caroline Glick is going to join us about the Iranian attack on Israel. 6:35, Robin Ficker running for Senate in Maryland. 7:05, Joe DeGenevo will join us. 7:35, Ryan Ellis, a tax expert on this 15th day of April. And 8:05, Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch on the beginning of the trial against Donald Trump in New York today. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Julie
Good
Gunlock,
morning.
who, by the way, is fighting the combination allergy, cold, buggy thing that's flying around. She does have 3 children in her house, so you pretty much it's like a petri dish there with all the kids.
Yeah, I wish it had been last week when the eclipse was happening. Good to have a raspy voice, I could sing that song. Not so much this week.
I had no idea that you had a desire to be Bonnie Tyler. It's very good to know. All right, we mentioned last week that it appears, despite many reports to the contrary, that Pope Francis is in fact Catholic, as he put out a statement specifically, a document, I should say. Does this rise to the level? Is it a bull? Is it a doctrine? Is it we don't know. There's lots of different papers that can come out of the Vatican, but it definitely carries weight. And the statement specifically said that regarding gender theory, as they put, I'll read a little bit of it, whose scientific coherence is the subject of considerable debate among experts. The Church recalls that human life in all its dimensions, both physical and spiritual, is a gift from God. This is called dignitas infinita, by the way. The gift is to be accepted with gratitude and placed at the service of the good. Desiring a personal self-determination, as gender theory prescribes, apart from this fundamental truth that human life is a gift, amounts to a concession to the age-old temptation to make oneself God, entering into competition with the true God of love revealed to us in the gospel. In other words, you're making your body into an idol, and we should not be worshiping idols. It also says another prominent aspect of gender theory is that it intends to deny the greatest possible difference that exists between living beings, sexual difference. This foundational difference is not only the greatest imaginable difference, but is also the most beautiful and most powerful of them. In the male-female couple, this difference achieves the most marvelous of reciprocities. It thus becomes the source of that miracle that never ceases to surprise us, the arrival of a new human being in the world. It's a great document,
it's
actually.
Beautiful.
And it's actually strikes the perfect tone. So, as you know, Julie, Joe Biden is the most devout Catholic in America.
Right.
He's up for sainthood, I think.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think so.
Well, Karine Jean-Pierre was asked specifically about how very Catholic and devout, they always say he's devout, devout Catholic Joe Biden responds to such a document, because obviously his government's policies run contrary with his church. And he said, or she said, excuse me, Karine Jean-Pierre said, I'm going to be very careful. The president's role to litigate internal church policy, that's not his role. Thank you. I love that she started by saying the president's role. So I'm going to be careful. He says, I can speak to the president's stance. He's always been very clear on the importance of protecting or having protections for the transgender community and the broader LGBTQ plus community. And that's been very clear since day one of his administration. What a bald-faced lie. No one, Pope Francis, Julie Gunlock, Larry O'Connor, Donald Trump, nobody is suggesting that people in any community shouldn't have protections.
Right.
This isn't about protections. This is about this administration's policies through Title IX and through the Justice Department and through the Education Department to do, and through Health and Human Services, by the way, encouraging children to mutilate their bodies at the altar of this idol worship. That's what Biden is guilty of. Biden has not put up protections. Everyone had protections. Biden is actually using the government to encourage this among children and adults.
And what Karine Jean-Pierre is no brainiac, obviously. But what they also fail to realize is theology, or sort of this trans theory is ultimately anti-gay, anti-lesbian. Because if you are a young person who presents as having sort of an attraction to the opposite sex, that doesn't mean that you're gay. That means that you're actually the opposite sex and you need to endeavor to change your identity. Yeah. It's not enough to be gay or lesbian. You actually have to transition now. Mm-hmm. And what's so sad is that many of these studies coming out show that a lot of these kids, once they grow out of this, many of them end up gay or lesbian. They don't end up
right. And they said,
and some of them just grow out of it entirely.
Right.
And end up having opposite sex attraction. And so it's ultimately anti-LGBTQ or LGBT.
LGB.
LGBT.
It's anti-LGB.
Right.
And it's also anti-children, and it's anti-natural science. And now it's anti-Catholic, too,
yes.
from our devout Catholic president. This may, by the way, explain why, if you remember in January 2023, when Pope Benedict passed away, Joe Biden, that devout Catholic president, leader of the free world, was not invited to the funeral.
In mourning the passing of Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, he will...
I forgot about that.
Emeritus.
I forgot about the emeritus.
Emeritus. God, I love her.
It's emeritus, honey.
We'll always remember the Pope's generosity and meaningful conversation they had when he visited the Vatican in 2011. So to answer your question, the U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See, Joe Donnelly, will represent the United States at the funeral of the Pope in line with the wishes of the late Pope and the Vatican. This is
in line with the wishes of the late Pope. And in other words, Benedict did not want Biden there in any way whatsoever. It's 5. We've got more transgender news, though, as this very Catholic president who just wants to provide protections for transgender individuals. We've got another story of more young women, this time in Oregon, who have been denied the ability to win a race in a high school track meet because of a young man who is confused about his gender, so he got to win a race. We'll tell you those details in a moment.
Church service. He is, as we keep pointing out, a religious man, a man of deep faith, only the second Catholic to be elected president of the United States. Give us a little background on what's unfolding right now.
Well, Wolf, what we are seeing right now is President-elect Biden turning once again to his Catholic faith, which has really been a mainstay throughout his life. As you mentioned, he will be the second Catholic to become president, following in the footsteps of President John F. Kennedy, whose funeral mass was actually held in that very church that Biden is attending mass this morning. And you saw the president-elect inviting those congressional leaders, trying to send this message of unity as
everything about it is just propaganda. Sending the message of unity. Yes, he had his other fellow Catholic congressmen and senators there at St. Matthew's right before the inauguration, trying to convince them to vote to kill babies in the womb right up into the moment of birth because he's just that devout. And now we have the Vatican absolutely publicly announcing that everything that the Biden administration stands for with regard to the transgender policies that they embrace and support and promote is an abomination to this deep, abiding faith that Joe Biden practices. What is exactly Catholic about Joe Biden, other than the fact that he publicly attends Mass, crosses himself, and then in a blasphemous way receives the Eucharist while in a state of mortal sin?
Yeah, absolutely nothing.
Honestly, it's he wears it like a costume.
He does. He's cosplaying, and you look at the state of his family. These are not good people. Yeah. These are not good. This is not a good family. It's not good people.
Meanwhile, over in Oregon, the results and manifestations of Joe Biden, his government's, and the political left in this country's policies regarding transgender individuals played itself out on a track meet in Oregon. Aiden Gallagher, a 10th grader, this is a 15-year-old kid, for God's sake, who identifies as a woman now, ran in the 200-meter, 200-meter race. And the video is remarkable. If you look, the actual girls in the race are like 50 meters behind. This was a heat to qualify for the final race, and Aiden Gallagher, trans-identified male, dominated the race. Wasn't even close.
I mean, Larry, they were so far back.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like they were in two different races.
Yeah. Now, it turns out that I think that in the actual finals, Aiden Gallagher ended up in second place. Finally, because there was one young girl who was faster, because sometimes there are girls that are faster than boys, but this is a mediocre boy, wouldn't even qualify for the state championships or any kind of tournament as a male runner, but as a female runner, finishes in second and blows away all the other competition. As our friend Kaya Rychik over at Libs of TikTok put it with the video, these high school girls just had their dreams stolen from them because the school is catering to delusions of a boy who pretends to be a girl. He is a cheater.
Yeah, and there were calls, of course, which we see every time we see this, for girls to opt out of these races. Just say, I'm not running against a man. Yeah. And that's so painful, considering that for many of them, they'll give up their chances of a scholarship or an award or a position on a college track team. But all I could think of is, yes, I hope more girls do protest in this way. But my God, where are the adults watching this? Where are the parents?
Well,
where are the parents have been quite vocal, but where are the adults, the coaches, and the organizations that run this?
They are, that's the answer. They are under the leadership of the organization. There's just so much that the parents and the coaches can do. When the Oregon School Activities Association has a policy, they put out a statement. The OSAA endeavors to allow students to participate for the athletic or activity program of their consistently asserted gender identity.
I guess I'm not asking legitimately. I'm asking in more of a
rhetorically.
What is going on?
Yeah.
How can you watch this and allow this to happen? It's just sickening.
Yeah, and I recognize it won't change until girls decide to just protest and stop participating. The problem is it goes against everything that these young women know. If you've ever been the parent of a child athlete, to have them train and compete at the lower levels, and then they reach this tournament, they reach the states, say, nope, you shouldn't do this, you can't do this, because it's like, no, this is all I know. This is all I've been focused on. But sometimes there were bigger issues involved.
And it's always just so amusing in light of the sort of girl power narrative that we hear so much. This is the absolute opposite of that. So